There's a phrase that sports fans just love to scream at the television.
Oh, yeah.
Usually when a ref makes a terrible call, or if, I don't know, a lucky bounce settles a big match, they just shout, "The ball never lies."
It's the ultimate silencer, isn't it? It just cuts through all the noise, the excuses, the whole narrative.
Exactly. But today, we're not talking about basketball fouls or football penalties. We're taking that phrase, "the ball never lies," and we're applying it to something much more precise and, honestly, a lot more ruthless.
Yeah.
Your golf game. Because, let's be real, how many times have you hit a shot that felt perfect?
Yeah.
You hold the pose, you twirl the club, and then you look up and the ball is 40 yards right into the cabbage.
It is the classic betrayal, but that betrayal is, it's actually the starting point for everything we're talking about today.
It is. We are doing a deep dive into the mind and methods of Henrik Jentsch. Now, if you're a casual golf fan, you might not know the name, but inside the industry, he is a real heavyweight. He's a Danish coach born back in 1959 who's evolved into what people are now calling a performance architect.
Which is such a great title. It sounds like he's building skyscrapers, but he's actually building golf swings.
Right.
And the context here is key. It is February 11th, 2026. The golf world has completely gone digital. There's AI everywhere. And right in the center of this whole storm is Jentsch, making huge waves with his new 2026 Golf Manifesto and his role as head of the Golf Academy, Golf 360 by AI Golf Chat.
AI Golf Chat. It sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi novel, but, well, here we are. But before we get to the robots and manifestos, we really have to unpack the core problem Jentsch has spent his life trying to solve. Because for most of us, hacking it around on a Saturday, golf just feels like a total mystery.
It's that eternal conflict, isn't it? It's feel versus real. That is the fundamental disconnect. What a player feels they are doing, where they think their hands are, how their hips are turning. It often completely contradicts what the laws of physics say is actually happening.
I live in that disconnect. I feel like I'm swinging with this effortless silk, and the video looks like I'm fighting off a swarm of bees.
You are definitely not alone there. And Jentsch's whole mission, really the goal of this deep dive, is to explore how he moved golf instruction away from that subjective art, make it look pretty, to objective engineering. We are talking about a synthesis of biomechanics, 3D technology, and a very, very strict mental discipline that's all designed to lower scores without necessarily rebuilding your entire swing.
Well, that's the dream, right?
Yeah.
Lower scores without the 6 months of misery trying to change your grip.
Yeah.
But to understand this manifesto he just released, we have to rewind a bit. You said he was born in Denmark in '59. What was the scene like for him then?
Well, back in the 60s and 70s, Danish golf wasn't really the powerhouse it is today. Jentsch started as an amateur, and even as a kid, he had this realization. He noticed his hands were lying to him. The feel was just unreliable.
But the ball flight.
But the ball flight, the trajectory, the spin, the curve, that was the absolute truth.
So he turns pro in the '80s with this mindset already in place. Did that validate his theory, or was he just kind of an outlier?
A bit of both, really. As a touring pro, he's watching these elite players.
Guys who paid their mortgages with golf.
Exactly, guys at the very top, and they were struggling desperately, and they were struggling because they were chasing these aesthetic positions. They wanted the swing to look like the pictures in the magazines. But Jentsch realized the only objective diagnostic tool is the ball. If the impact is right, who cares if your backswing looks a little funky?
Okay, this brings us to a really interesting part of the research. The notes call it the Ballad of the Dangerous Truth.
Sounds like a Western movie, doesn't it?
It really does. So who's the hero of this ballad?
A man named Jimmy Ballard. Now, if you dig into golf history, Ballard was a hugely controversial figure in the 1980s. The PGA institutional manuals, sort of the Bible of golf instruction back then, they taught a very specific traditional style.
And Ballard said?
Ballard came in and basically said, no, that's wrong. He preached connectedness. He wanted players using the large muscles, their legs and core, essentially a ground-up sequence.
And I'm guessing the establishment loved that, right? Embraced him with open arms.
Hardly. They basically marginalized him, treated him like a heretic. But, and here's the dangerous truth, Ballard's students were winning everything.
We're talking big tournaments.
Huge. In 1988 alone, Ballard's students, we're talking legends like Sev Ballesteros and Curtis Strange, they won 4 majors.
4 in 1 year.
4 in 1 year.
That is impossible to ignore.
You'd think so. But the establishment tried. Jentsch, though, he saw right through the politics. He saw that Ballard wasn't teaching a style, he was teaching physics. This just aligned perfectly with Jentsch's own philosophy. It shifted him toward what he calls a lean-in learning model.
Lean in.
Yeah, you lean into the results, you lean into the impact truth, even if the textbook says you're doing it all wrong.
Okay, let's get a little nerdy for a second.
Yeah.
Because Jentsch isn't just dealing in, vibes. He's applying actual Newtonian physics to the swing. I saw a formula in our source material that looked terrifying.
It looks worse than it is. The formula is m vecchio vecchi am.
Whoa, okay, yeah, I'm going to need you to translate that into English for me, please.
In plain English, it just explains ground reaction force, or GRF.
Okay.
So think of it this way. The ground is your battery. It's your primary power source. A golfer doesn't create speed by just flailing their arms. They generate it by pushing against the earth.
Like when you jump.
Exactly like jumping. It's Newton's third law. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. You push down, the earth pushes back up. That energy travels up your legs, into your hips, whips through your torso, and finally just releases out to the club head. That's the kinematic sequence.
Right.
And Jentsch was a super early adopter of this biomechanical view, moving away from swinging the arms to using the ground.
And he didn't just stop with the full swing. He took this whole engineering mindset and applied it to putting. Now, I have to admit, I usually think of putting as feel. It's an art form. It's, magic.
And Jentsch should probably say that's exactly why you missed 3-footers.
Ouch. Fair enough.
He treats putting as pure engineering. He uses this total 3D solution, which includes a piece of tech called puddleize.
Puddleize. That sounds intense.
It is. We are talking about capturing movement with 0.2 millimeter accuracy.
Wait, 0.2 millimeters? Seriously? That's thinner than a fingernail.
It's insane, and at that level of precision, there's just no hiding. Jentsch focuses on what he calls the ball roll laws. He argues that the only things that matter are launch angle, side spin, and rollout percentage.
So not touch.
Not touch. If you get those physics right, if you deliver the face square to the path with the right rise angle, the ball goes in the hole. It's just geometry.
Kind of takes the romance out of it, but I bet it puts more birdies on the card.
And that's the trade-off Jentsch always offers. Do you want to be romantic, or do you want to be effective?
I'll take effective.
All right.
Which leads us perfectly into the present day. February 2026. Jentsch drops his 2026 Golf Manifesto. And listeners might be expecting like a complex diagram of swing planes, but this is actually a mental framework, isn't it?
It is, and this is where the deep dive gets really actionable for you listening right now. You don't need a $20,000 launch monitor to do this. The manifesto is basically a code of conduct. Jentsch argues you can lower your scores, and significantly, without changing your mechanics at all.
How?
Simply by sticking to 4 non-negotiable rules.
Non-negotiable. I like that. It removes the decision fatigue. Let's walk through them. Rule number 1, fairway first.
This one attacks the ego directly. The rule is, if you're on the tee and you choose not to hit a driver, maybe because you want to play it safe, the replacement club must hit the fairway.
That seems fair. If I'm pulling a 3-wood or a hybrid, I'm doing it for accuracy.
Exactly. But how often do you see someone pull a 3-wood for safety and then they just slash it into the rough anyway?
All the time. I did it last weekend.
Jentsch says that's just a failure of logic. Distance is the biggest advantage in the modern game. If you sacrifice 30 yards by hitting a 3-wood, you are paying a price. The only thing you're buying with that price is accuracy.
And if you miss the fairway.
If you miss the fairway with the safe club, you've paid the price and received nothing. It's a catastrophic strategic error.
So the implication is, if you aren't 100% sure you can hit the fairway with the 3-wood, you might as well just hit the driver.
Precisely. If you're going to be in the rough, you might as well be in the rough 30 yards closer to the hole.
Wow. That changes the math completely. Okay, rule number 2. This is my favorite, and also the one that scares me the most. Wedge equals green.
This is the scoring zone rule. If you have a wedge in your hand lob, sand, gap, pitching wedge, the ball must finish on the putting surface. No exceptions.
So no, just on the fringe. No, oh, it spun back too much.
Nope, green. You have a scoring club, you must have a putt for the next shot.
Huh.
And to train this, Jentsch uses the 3-ball wedge training drill.
Walk us through that drill.
It's a pressure simulation. You pick a target on the range. You have to hit 3 consecutive balls into that target area. If you hit 2 perfectly and then miss the 3rd one.
Back to the start.
Back to 0.
That is brutal.
It brings the sweat. It simulates the consequence of a real tournament. You know that feeling on the 18th hole where you just cannot mess up? This drill recreates that anxiety on the range. It forces you to focus not just on the potential great shot, but on eliminating the really destructive one.
I'm so going to try that. And I apologize in advance to anyone waiting for my spot at the driving range because I might be there all night.
Just keep grinding.
Okay, rule number 3. Avoid the dead zone. This sounds ominous. What is the dead zone?
The dead zone is the distance between 30 and 80 yards. Jentsch identifies this as probably the most dangerous yardage in golf for the average player.
Why that specific window?
Because it demands a partial swing.
Right.
It's a feel shot. You can't make a full turn, but you can't just chip it. And what happens when amateurs try to hit, say, a 50-yard shot?
They decelerate.
Every single time. They get tentative, the hands take over, and they either chunk it 5 feet or scull it over the green.
Guilty as charged.
So Jentsch's rule is to strategize your way out of that yardage. If you can't get inside 30 yards, where you can use a simple putting stroke with a wedge, you should lay up to a full swing distance, usually somewhere between 90 and 110 yards.
So on a par 5, if I smash a 3-wood and leave myself 50 yards, I've actually made a mistake.
You've put yourself in a high-variance situation. Instead, maybe you hit a 7-iron to lay up to your perfect 100-yard wedge number. A full swing allows for rhythm, for commitment, predictable contact. A half swing, that relies on perfect timing. Jentsch just wants to reduce that cognitive load.
That takes so much discipline. You have to actively choose to be further from the hole.
It does, but statistically, most amateurs will hit it closer from 100 yards with a full swing than they will from 50 yards with a half swing.
That makes total sense when you say it, but it's so hard to do in the moment. Okay, and finally, rule number 4, the 15-yard safety rule.
This is for any carryover, a hazard water, bunkers, ravines. The rule is simple. You must add a 15-yard buffer to your normal carry distance.
Your normal shot, not your absolute best one.
Exactly, your average strike. So if the water is a 150-yard carry,
You need a club that carries at least 165.
at least 165 on a normal swing. If you don't have that club, you lay up. No exceptions.
Because we aren't robots.
We aren't robots. This accounts for a mishit, a gust of wind, slightly heavy contact. It eliminates that water ball that just ruins a round. It turns a potential double or triple bogey into, at worst, a bogey.
It's amazing how all these rules are really just about removing hope.
That is the key word. Jentsch wants to replace hope-based decisions with protocols. It reduces all the mental clutter. You aren't standing over the ball wondering, can I make this? The rule already says no, so you don't even try. You just execute the protocol.
Remove hope, lower scores. That should be on a t-shirt.
It's not very romantic, but it definitely works.
So zooming out a bit, we've got the physics, we have the mental rules. What does this all mean for the future of coaching? We're in 2026 now. How is Jentsch influencing the next generation?
Well, we're really seeing the rise of the information-driven athlete. And Jentsch has championed this distinction between prescriptive coaching and descriptive coaching.
What's the difference there?
Old school was prescriptive. You must swing like this model because I said so. Jentsch is descriptive. He says, here's the data. Here's the 0.2 millimeter variance in your putting stroke. Here is your ground force chart. Now let's make the absolute smallest adjustment necessary to change the ball flight.
It empowers the player.
It totally empowers the player to understand their own cause and effect.
And he's spreading this message globally. I was looking at his platform, golf247.eu. It's absolutely massive.
It's a beast of a resource. By February 2026, his daily podcast on the site has already reached episode 493. And he's covering everything. He talks about equipment rollbacks. He analyzes the new world rankings. He even covers the whole integration of Levy golf players finally getting ranking points, which was a huge drama.
Right, so he covers the politics, the tech, the teaching. He really is a teacher of teachers. And his physical footprint is growing too. I saw something about a massive facility down in Texas.
Yes, the True Golf Range in Flower Mound, Texas. It's a $4.5 million indoor facility. This really represents Jentsch's vision of the future. Year-round, weather-independent training hubs where technology is built into every single bay. It's not just about beating balls into a field anymore. It's a data center for your swing.
And of course, we can't forget his own accolades. He was the 2001 World Golf Teachers Cup individual champion. So the guy can actually play.
He can play, and that lends so much credibility to everything he says. He's been inside the ropes. He knows the pressure. That's why his role now at Golf 360 by AI Golf Chat is so fitting. He's bridging that gap between the visceral experience of hitting a golf ball, the sweat, the nerves, and the artificial intelligence that can now analyze it better than any human eye.
It really is a fascinating evolution. From a kid in Denmark realizing his hands were lying to him, to a global performance architect using AI to tell the absolute truth.
It's the journey from feel to real. And Jentsch has been the guide for that entire journey.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what does this all mean for the listener? Maybe they aren't going to fly to Flower Mound, Texas, or buy a $20,000 putt lab.
You don't need the lab to apply the philosophy. The takeaway is just to replace guessing with measuring. Whether you use a simple phone app to record your swing or you just strictly follow that 15-yard rule we talked about, the goal is objectivity. Stop relying on how the swing felt and start looking at where the ball actually went.
Because the ball never lies.
It never does. And I want to leave you, the listener, with one final, maybe provocative thought that Jentsch shared recently on his platform. It was about the scorecard.
Let's hear it.
He said that a scorecard is not just a record of numbers. He said it is a binding legal document of personal responsibility.
Wow. That makes a Saturday round feel pretty serious all of a sudden.
But think about it. In a world full of excuses and spin and, carefully curated social media lives, the scorecard, like the ball, is one of the only things that remains an absolute truth. When you sign it at the end of the round, you're attesting to your integrity. Jentsch believes that if you treat the scorecard with that level of reverence, your decision-making on the course will naturally become more disciplined. You stop taking stupid risks because you respect the permanence of that score.
That is heavy, but it is so true. Golf exposes character like nothing else.
It certainly does.
Well, that's all for today's deep dive into the mind of Henrik Jentsch. Next time you're on the course, maybe try that wedge equals green rule. Just maybe warn your playing partners before you start swearing at yourself on the range.
Hey, better on the practice green than in the hazard.
Thanks for listening and keep it in the fairway.